for those of you guys who are here live or watching the recording, if you don't know me, my name is Megan Robitaille. I'm the owner and founder of Mindful Movement, which is a functional fitness training and mindset shift company that is really aimed at facilitating a greater understanding of the science behind the mind-body connection so that all of the movement that we do with our bodies can be as informed as possible, as effective as possible, not only in creating physique change, but in facilitating habit change. So a lot of this is, fitness is one of those places that for many people has been a sort of a red flag, a place where it becomes glaringly evident how important habit change is, how important our outlook on things, really is. And it's really just one representation of what we're doing everywhere else in our lives. So mindful movement is about the movement of your body, but it's about the movement of your mind, and thus the movement in any part of your life coming out of that. So today's masterclass is going to be bringing you more of the science. That was great. No worries. I told you I was on vacation with people. More of the science behind the mind-body connection so that you have a greater understanding of, all of these mindset gurus all over social media, these manifestation gurus are telling you, you need to do this daily practice. You need to do this journaling exercise. And there is so much emphasis on discipline and so much emphasis on follow through. And there's so little emphasis on the scientific reasoning behind what's happening in your brain and body when you're participating in these things. Because if we don't have that understanding, we don't have a compelling reason to follow through. So we have a population of people who, for the most part, know what they should and want to and need to do to make the changes in their lives, but they feel powerless to actually do it. Mindful movement is about changing that, giving us a greater understanding of our physiology so that we can use it to change our habits in our lives, right? So that's what mindful movement is really all about. And it focuses on creating what I like to call mind-body congruency, which is a congruency between the programming of the unconscious mind and body and the conscious mind, which is our wants, desires, things that we would like to change in our lives. So it's about habit change, success, healing, physical change, health change. It's about all of those things. So this masterclass is probably going to be 60-minute presentation followed by questions if anyone's into that. And the first section will be a little bit of my story, how I personally fell into this space and why I do what I do, how I've used that story to inform what I do. The second part is going to be demystifying and reframing the spiritual self-development space. So what is it about this manifestation or law of attraction conversation that is losing some of us, right? What is it that isn't being explained scientifically? And how is it that whatever we refer to as manifestation or the law of attraction actually has everything to do with habit change in the brain and the body, everything to do with physique change, health change, any healing, any shift. Thirdly, we'll be going over some more brain-body science. So what are the ways in which, first of all, the unconscious and the conscious minds are separated, and how is that it's ironically, as humans, as we have evolved, it is our greatest blessing and our greatest curse, because it is the thing that allows us to crave more than survival. And it is also the thing that often holds us back from acquiring those things. And then thirdly, we're going to go over more of the 3 habits that you can start to employ in your lifestyle, like today, how to employ them, and what are the scientific and physiological things going on in your body when you engage in these behaviors that create changes moving forward. So not just, hey, do this because it feels good and you should, and because a coach told you to, but hey, here's what's happening in your brain and body when you do this. Just as we would have physical feedback when we go to the gym, let's tangibilize things and give you physical feedback for the things that you're doing with your mental health. So yeah. So without further ado, I'd like to kind of start here with a screen share. I have a little presentation. So this is, for the most part, the last bit of my face that you'll be seeing for a little while. Again, mindful movement, move the body, move the mind. So I'd like to kind of start with a bit of my personal story, which leads me to this question that you see here on the screen, which I'll get to. My personal story, if you go all the way back, it begins with really severe anxiety as a child, to the point where I had these wonderings on what makes me different from others, or like what is wrong with me, this like catastrophic thinking all of the time. And so leading into college, it led into some OCD tendencies, some depression, anxiety, all of those things. And in college, it manifested into an eating disorder, and a severe exercise addiction. So I got to the point where it was, I have to go for my 10-mile run every day. I have to do my 6 hours of exercise every day. And, if I don't, something awful will happen, something terrible. And so it led me to this question. When looking back, I realized a lot of people have this idea about body dysmorphia and habit change in general. That is, people don't even know, they can't even see that they need to change. I don't think this is true. I think for me, there were so many moments where I knew I was sick. I knew I was harming myself. I knew something needed to change. I knew I wasn't happy where I was, but that didn't give me any more power to make those changes. So looking at myself in the mirror, seeing how sick I looked and felt, and still waking up in the morning to go for that 10-mile run because it was an addiction, right? Not understanding what was causing this, right? It led me to this question, which I have realized now moving forward as I've worked in the fitness space. I've been in the fitness industry for the last 5 years. I've been coaching online with fitness, business, and life coaching for the last few years now. And this question comes up for pretty much everyone. How can I know what I want, know what I need to do to get what I want, and still not do it? And that's the question that all of us, ooh, I just moved the couch. Sorry, guys. That's the question that all of us are asking. For the majority of it, it's not a matter of, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Now, we often fool ourselves into believing that because we want to take the responsibility off of ourselves to take action. But the main question is, if I had to start today, I would know where to start. I know I could start with something. So how is it that I can know exactly what I need to do to get what I want, which I want more than anything, and still not do it? And that's the question that this masterclass is really aimed at answering for you guys and giving you tools moving forward to change that, whether that has anything to do with fitness or anything else in your life. And the 3 patterns that we can all also identify that are coming out of this question are, oh, it won't go forward. Things I need to figure out beforehand. Oh, here we go. It got stuck there. All right, the first one, these are all coming out of the same general idea. The first thing is procrastination. So we don't even start. We know what we want. We know what we need to do to get what we want, but we don't do it. Why? The second thing is self-sabotage. So we start, but we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot pretty early on in the process. So we don't get very far before something doesn't work, before we decide to turn back, right? And now the third thing is yo-yoing back and forth. So we've actually gotten a taste of what it is to have what we want. We've gotten it, we've accomplished it, we've been there, but it doesn't stick around. It doesn't stick around. These 3 things are exactly the same. These concepts are exactly the same. And one of the biggest frustrations for me from starting with my exercise addiction and my eating disorder, asking this question, how can I know what I want, know exactly what I need to do to get what I want and still not do it? Now coaching people and seeing these 3 issues over and over again, just being the bane of the general human existence. And we're still asking this question every day. How do I stay motivated? How do I not procrastinate? How do I not self-sabotage? How do I stop yo-yoing? I'm in so many fitness groups across all of these platforms, and it's like this huge mystery that humans can't figure out. Why am I engaging in these behaviors? And yet, the majority of humans, to the point where hundreds or thousands of people are commenting on these posts saying, I feel the same way, are feeling the same way. So why is it not general knowledge then where these patterns are coming from? If it has everything to do with the way that the human brain is set up, we should be educating. We should be understanding, this question of how can I know what I need to do to get what I want and still not do it? We should be helping people understand what the answer to that question is and giving them actual tools to make those changes. So I kind of want to move now into, after that story, right? After my personal story, starting to demystify the spiritual self-development space. It's 2021. I would say the last 5 to 10 years have seen a huge change in the way that we look at self-development. And that depends on whether you've been in the space for a while or not, but the space itself is now accessible to huger and larger groups of people. So when I started my online business, I was very quickly introduced to The Secret. I was introduced to the law of attraction, to manifestation, to all of these things that I had never heard of before, right? And I started to understand and make these connections. And now, as I've moved forward and I've made these connections between the mind and the body, the physiology and the habit change, and then making those connections between habit change, identity shift, self making, and manifestation, I see this huge hole in social media and in general in people's understanding of what this is really about, right? So I have this little equation that I created for this. And for me, this is something that we'll hear a lot. Manifestation is intention plus emotional alignment backed by faith. But manifestation itself is not just about bringing about something that you want. It's about any change in your life, any growth, healing, shift, and consistency. So let me explain what I mean by that, right? There's this concept that we learn how to manifest, or we learn the law of attraction, and then all of a sudden we're bringing these things about. When the truth is that manifestation is something that's happening all of the time. It's been happening for our entire lives. So anything that we have consistently that has a tendency to stick around is something that we've been continuously bringing about by our conditioning, belief system, unconscious programming. So what we're really aiming to do when we learn how to, quote, manifest is change the patterning that's already been established. It's not that we're just trying to get something, it's that we're trying to get something new. We're trying to get something we haven't had before. So if you've been in this physical or any kind of reality in your life, let's say fitness, you've been in this version of your body for 10, 15 years. It's not that you stopped bringing things about and you have to learn how to bring them about now. It's that you have been living in the mindset and the habit and the conditioning of brain and body that has been continuously bringing about this physical version of yourself. And making that change manifestation wise is not about starting the ball rolling. It's about moving. It's about taking a rolling ball and switching the direction, right? So intention plus emotional alignment backed by faith is not just about bringing about any kind of manifestation, right? It's habit change. So kind of taking this into more, it's a lot to talk about, right? I think we have this idea that we're bringing about this physical thing, and we have a tendency to then make the subject of manifestation, or whatever you want to call it, the physical thing that we're acquiring, rather than the journey, the process. So there's a change from within that's going on. It's about changing your perception, changing your outlook, changing your habits, your thoughts, your actions, your emotional responses. It is about you bringing about a new physical reality in your life because you're changing. And that is what we're going to talk about today when we talk about the mind-body connection and the ways in which those are very sticky. The unconscious programming in your brain is mapped out throughout your entire body. So when it feels like it's difficult to make a change in your physical reality, it is quite literally because your body has remembered the way that things are and the way that you are, and it's sticky. It's sticky. And this brings us back to procrastination, self-sabotaging, and yo-yoing. So the basic idea, oops, sorry, I'm messing up with these slides here. The basic idea is intention is affiliated with the conscious mind. Intention is something that we identify consciously. We see that other people have it. We see evidence of the fact that it's possible. And so we make a decision for ourselves that is, I want that thing. And I really think and believe that I can have it. But the emotional alignment being my emotional response, my attitude, my feeling, my belief system is created in the unconscious mind. And I'm sure you guys have heard before that the unconscious mind is actually 90% of our functioning. 90% of our thoughts, behaviors, emotional responses are coming from the unconscious mind. So what happens when there's an incongruency between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind is our conscious mind says, I want this. I want this new thing. I'm going to make this change. I'm going to manifest something, right? And the unconscious mind says, whoa, 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 whoa. You have been conditioned into this belief system for so long. And we're gonna start to demystify what belief system is. Belief system is a physical imprint in brain and body between hormones, neurotransmitters. There is a physical imprint in your entire body that creates who you are, who you identify as, your value system, your belief system. So if what you want consciously is at odds with that conditioning, that version of you that's walking around physically imprinted all day, you're going to find yourself back to those 3 patterns we talked about at the very beginning, which are the procrastination, the self-sabotage, and the yo-yoing back and forth. Your conscious mind says, I want something. Your unconscious mind says, no, 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 can't have that. I don't start, I procrastinate. Second thing, the conscious mind says, I want something. The unconscious mind says, no, 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 no. But maybe the conscious mind wins out just a little bit and you say, all right, all right, all right. I'm going to start, I'm going to do it. But oof, shot myself in the foot with that one, and then we self-sabotage. Third thing, hey, my conscious mind wants something. My unconscious mind says, no, 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 but I'm going to use discipline. I'm going to push harder than I've ever pushed before. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to excuse me, I swear on these. I'm going to make it happen. And then we yo-yo back and forth. We get a taste of what we want. We've accomplished it and we're back to square one. We lose the weight, we gain the weight. We lose the weight, we gain the weight. Why? Because there is an incongruency within your unconscious and your conscious mind. Your conscious mind wants something and your unconscious mind says, I am not conditioned for it. And habit change cannot be accomplished by discipline alone because discipline insinuates that there is friction. Discipline insinuates that you are going against the grain. You're going against what is natural for you. So if we live a life of discipline, we're always yo-yoing. We're always oscillating. We should be, rather than figuring out how do we make sacrifice and discipline and pain, which we see honorable, how do I make all of those things in my life something that I can do long-term? We should be asking, how do I transition discipline into a completely new conditioning of myself, a completely new version of myself, physically, mentally, mind, body? That's what real habit change is. And that's how you make discipline not feel like work. Because you don't go against the grain when you change your identity and you change your habits and you change who you are physically and mentally from the inside out. So that's what we're going to bring into now. Sorry, guys, my computer has this thing where it freezes up if I don't click it for a little bit on the slide presentation. So I want to get now into a little bit of science of the conscious unconscious separation, because after, like I said, having dealt with this myself for so long, that question, how can I know what I want? How can I know exactly what I need to do to get what I want and still not do it? I started to ask myself, okay, consciously, I want to be healed from this eating disorder. Consciously, I want to gain weight. Consciously, I don't want to exercise 6 hours a day anymore. Consciously, I want all of these things, but there's got to be something else. There's got to be something else that's more powerful because I'm not making those changes. And then when I started my business and I started to help other people, as well as just seeing these patterns of self-sabotage, procrastination, and yo-yoing happen in other parts of my life, I realized it doesn't have to be as severe as an addiction. It doesn't have to be as severe as something self-destructive to affect us or impact us negatively. This is the basis of negative habits. This is the basis of stuckness. This is the basis of, I want to make a change in my life and I feel disempowered from doing it. So as humans, if we can all identify with these patterns, what is it consistent in human nature and human physiology that creates this? This is the question we should be asking, rather than, I don't understand why this is happening, even though it seems to be happening to every other human on the planet, right? So let's get to the bottom of it. Let's talk about a little bit of brain anatomy and evolution. So I like to keep it simple. There's a lot more science you could get into for this. And for this section, these slides are actually part of an online course that I have been running, which I will tell you about at the end of this presentation. But I did put a little bit of the online course in this presentation because I wanted you guys to have the slides written out. So let's start with the main 3 parts of the brain, if you want to break it down in some certain scientific circles. We talked about the unconscious brain versus the conscious brain. Let's break it down a little further, okay? The reptilian brain is described as the oldest and most deeply rooted part of the brain. It is concerned first and foremost with our most basic instincts, like temperature balance and breathing. So this is about physical survival. The reptilian brain is the reason that your heart keeps beating. It's the reason that breathing is involuntary. It's the reason that you get hungry and you get satisfied. You start to sweat when you're hot so that your body is always maintaining homeostasis, always maintaining physical balance, right? The reptilian brain is called the reptilian brain because it is present as a part of the brain in many other different kinds of animals that you might call less evolved than humans. It literally just keeps you alive, right? So it is a huge part of the unconscious mind. Now, the second part, for simplified purposes, of the unconscious mind is referred to as the mammalian brain, right? So the mammalian brain contains the limbic system and it handles emotional responses. So the limbic system is a group of structures in the brain that deal with emotions and memory. This system regulates autonomic endocrine function and response to emotional stimuli. It also plays a role, of course, then in reinforcing behavior and behavioral patterns. This is where we start to create conditioned responses, which many of you may have heard in psychology. A conditioned response is similar to an experiment where if you ring a bell every time a dog is going to get a treat, they start to associate that bell with the treat. Or if you praise the dog for sitting, they are going to create a positive conditioned response to sitting, which reinforces a specific behavior. And the amygdala, a certain part of the brain, also located in this region of the subconscious brain, there's a lot of emotional safety mechanisms tied into there. So the mammalian brain, the important part about this is that similar to the reptilian brain, it's usually concerned with survival. The unconscious mind is all about survival. It's all about keeping you alive. Now, unlike the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain is all about emotion. So usually anytime under the age, usually between the ages of 0 and 9, this is when we're the most programmable, so to speak. We have certain events or experiences in our lives that we interpret in a certain way and we make it mean something. We make agreements in our head that say, if I became safe or I felt safe in this situation by acting or feeling a certain way, I am going to begin to associate that emotion with safety. This is where we have unconscious emotional patterns. Maybe you always respond to your partner in a specific way and you don't know why, or certain things trigger you. It is because the unconscious mind is always concerned with survival. And as mammals, that comes up emotionally. There are emotional patterns that now, as adults, aren't serving us, emotional responses that aren't serving us, but our brain has programmed us in a way that facilitates those patterns to continue because it truly believes that we need them in order to survive. So again, both of these deeper parts of the brain are concerned with survival. Now, moving into the conscious mind. The interesting thing is the unconscious mind, again, I'm going to say this so many times, is usually first and foremost about survival, right? 90% of your brain is like, I want to keep you alive. I want to keep you alive. I want self-preservation. Now, the converse to self-preservation would be to transcend, to go beyond, right? As humans, we have developed the neocortex, which is basically the frontal lobe or the conscious mind. It is the newest and most evolved region of the brain. We may consider it, like I said, the conscious mind. It's more concerned with rational responses, critical thinking, things like that. But what it is also concerned with is desire. Like I said, all of our higher desires rest within the conscious mind. So our unconscious mind, the animalistic side of us, the instinct side of us, it wants to keep us alive emotionally and physically. But the conscious mind, we as humans have the ability to say, I want so much more out of this life. I want to create so much more for myself. I want to change my habits. I want to change my patterns. I want to get really fit, right? Your dog is always responding based on physical and emotional survival. But we have this higher developed region of the brain as humans that says, I want so much more. And this is what I meant at the beginning when I referred to the separation between the conscious and the unconscious mind being our greatest blessing and our greatest curse. It is because of this higher development and this separation that we are able to create and want so much more. But it is also the reason that we find ourselves in these patterns of procrastination, self-sabotage, and yo-yoing that make it feel difficult to make those changes, difficult to get from point A to point B, difficult to change our habits enough to consistently acquire what we really want, whether that's in fitness or literally anything else. So if you're having trouble with those habit changes, it is always coming from an incongruency between the conscious and the unconscious mind. They're not in agreement. You're sitting down with your partner to watch Netflix and you can't decide what to watch because neither of you is in agreement on anything. You spend 2 hours and then you go to bed because you decided, it's easier to just not watch anything, right? That's what this is. That's you trying to reach your fitness goals, trying to start the business, trying to change anything in your life. If your unconscious mind, if you can't find a way to put it in agreement with what you want consciously, it's always going to feel like a struggle. It's always going to feel like a life of discipline, which, to be honest, the unconscious mind is wired for two main things: survival, of course, self-preservation, and pleasure. Those two things are associated with each other. So we have this narrative on discipline. We have this narrative on honor and sacrifice. That is, I accomplished all of this because I was disciplined. And the irony is that that doesn't serve us because no human in the world has the stamina to sacrifice things that they want for their entire life and maintain it. So what we do is we sacrifice, we discipline, and then unconsciously, the little child inside of us is throwing a tantrum and saying, no, I want to have it all. I want the cookie that you're not letting me have. And then we go right back to square one and we yo-yo because we used all the discipline we had to use. We used it up, but we never made that physiological mind-body shift from within that says, I can create a new equilibrium for myself that is in a better place than I am now. And that's what this is about. So a little brain science there. I'm going to zoom through a little bit more on the unconscious and the conscious mind as soon as my slides here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here's a little visual, right? So, the neocortex is the largest part of the human brain development. So one interesting thing about my story is that during the time I was suffering with the eating disorder and the exercise addiction, I was also receiving a degree in biological anthropology. So going over the brain evolution and saying, this is really interesting. There's nothing wrong with me. There is nothing wrong about me. There is nothing bad about these things that I'm struggling with. This is my humanity showing itself. This is my humanity showing itself. But there's still a way to understand how to overcome it, right? You can see just how big the neocortex is. And when you look at archaeological records and things like that, one of the hugest things that humans developed, of course, was a larger cranium, a larger skull, because of the development of the neocortex, which made childbirth more problematic because the size of our pelvis, being bipedal, had to be smaller while the size of our brains increased. So there's lots of things going on here scientifically that have everything to do with you, getting up at 7 a.m. and going to the gym. It's about your brain, essentially. So let's move on now a little bit to just a little more general points on the subconscious and the conscious minds and really what they're responsible for, right? So again, the unconscious mind is responsible for any daily automatic functions. It is concerned with survival, and it governs the bodily functions that are always taking place in the background. So it keeps you alive physically, but it's also, concerned with keeping you alive, what I like to call more conceptually or emotionally, meaning that it perceives dangers or threats in emotions and emotional responses and triggers, which may not be true, that lead into stories you have for yourself, limiting beliefs, and of course, self-sabotaging behaviors, which are coming out of a misalignment between the action and the limiting belief. Or maybe you say to yourself, I want to be this version of myself, but you have a deeply rooted story or limiting belief based on some kind of ingrained survival mechanism emotionally that says, it's not safe for me to be this type of person. Now, we're not aware of it consciously, but unconsciously, that is what's wired into our brain and body. So when we set a conscious goal to be that type of person, we are procrastinating, self-sabotaging, and yo-yoing, and we're like, why is this happening? And the reason is we have two separate definitions of ourselves. One is unconscious. It's not allowing us to get what we want because we don't believe that we can be that person. And this is where we move into self-identity as well. But I'll chat a little bit more about that later. So again, a lot of these are programmed, with safety and comfort emotionally as a child. So, another branch of psychology I do a lot of work in is shadow work, which is talking to the child within and figuring out where things may have been programmed that, while they seem unrelated to whatever you're trying to assert in your life now, could actually be preventing you and holding you back from making those things happen. And it's really making peace with those versions of yourself as well. So moving forward, here we go. The interesting thing is, I think I went a little bit too far. Here we go. So there's a lot more information in the unconscious than the conscious brain, of course. It's over 90% of our daily behaviors are not even conscious. Same with emotional responses. So when we try to control our behaviors 100% with the conscious mind, you can see how it's a really, the fight is unfair. It's not a fair fight, So the thing about the unconscious mind is it's very quick to learn as well. It's very programmable, which means that humans are great at riding. We learn how to ride a bike. We learn how to create neural networks where we can work with our hands in certain ways. And in fact, it is easier to learn things like that at a young age. If you haven't ridden a bike before the age of 9, it is actually much harder to learn as an adult because your unconscious mind is more programmable during that time, which I'll get a little bit into. But, again, as simple as recalling the words to a song you haven't heard in 10 years, that's all stored in the unconscious mind, right? It's all in there. There is an endless amount of information in there, including the answers to all of the questions you have about why you can't stay consistent with this or that goal. It's all in there. And that is what we're digging to discover, right? So it is, for those reasons, also referred to as the habit mind. And the unconscious mind is what I like to call very sticky because of the physical programming. And we're going to get into that when we talk more about the mind-body connection in a little bit. It's much harder to change. You can change your mind consciously almost immediately. You can change what you believe are your opinions or your goals almost immediately. But the unconscious mind is going to be stubborn and it's going to hold you back. So, yes. I'm going to move forward here. Here we go. Oops. Got another person coming in. Yeah, so if you guys are coming in here, oops. If you were not here at the beginning, of course, watch the recording, but you can jump in now as well. So in contrast, the conscious mind is responsible for our identifiable thoughts and the formation of unique opinions. In this way, it also crafts what we think of as our self-perceived personality, while the unconscious mind often is going to create the personality as perceived by others. Even interestingly, I was having a conversation with a couple of friends last night about the way, one of those conversations of, hey, sometimes you come off this way and I don't think you realize it. It's like, wow, I didn't think that was a part of my personality. And it sucks to hear that other people think of this as a part of my personality because those patterns they were seeing were unconscious patterns. So there is what I believe is my personality in contrast to how others view me because of also this separation between the conscious and the unconscious minds. And as said previously, the conscious mind is easier to change and influence. And this is why we set goals. We think, we have desires. We want new things. We want fresh slates. We want all of that. We know what we want, We see that others have it. We say, wow, that's how I know it's possible. And we go for it. But the unconscious mind isn't quite that quick to catch up. And again, the conscious mind, or neocortex, is what makes us different from other animals. It's an important part of human evolution. It is our greatest blessing and our greatest curse. It is the reason that we have the ability to want and create and desire so much more. And it is also the reason that we often feel stuck and unable to make those changes consistently. Moving forward as soon as it lets me here. If anybody ever uses Google Slides and knows why they get stuck, let me know. The conscious mind is also the creative outlet. Again, we identify desires here and everything I had said before. So when we go back to that equation from the very beginning, intention plus emotional alignment equals manifestation, change, growth, healing, all of that. As I said, intention rests in the conscious mind. Intention is where we decide what we want. Faith, belief system, is programmed in the unconscious mind, usually years and years and years and years accumulated before you've decided what you want. So when these two sides of the brain interact, we get stuck because there is an incongruency. There is a fight between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind usually wins over because of its percentage of activity in our behavior. And this is the reason that we then return to the question from the beginning: how can I know what I want? How can I also know exactly what I need to do to get what I want? And how can I still not do it? The answer to those questions is the incongruency, right? The first, main thing that will usually happen is we have trouble with conscious vision or intention setting because what I like to call the screen of rationality between the conscious and the unconscious mind blocks our vision. So sometimes people come to me and they're like, hey, Megan, like, I want to visualize what I want, but I don't even know what I want. I know I'm not happy where I am, but I don't know what I want. I can't see it. I can't visualize it, right? And some of that is coming from the fact that you already have certain ideas about what is, quote, possible. So you can't even let those things come up. It's this screen of rationality, right, that creates that. So I tell them, I want you to entertain all possibilities, and I want to let something bubble up to the surface. And the second thing is, we know what we want, we can visualize it, but again, we keep falling into patterns of thought and action that produce the opposite result. And back to procrastination, self-sabotage, yo-yoing back and forth. It's all the same. And this is particularly applicable to fitness, which is why it was the first industry I worked in with coaching, and I remain in that industry, but from the perspective of creating real shift in people's lives that last long term, rather than, hey, do this program and then we'll see what happens. It's no, we're going to figure out what are the hangups here and we're going to make those shifts, right? And now, just really briefly, without crossing any boundaries here, addiction and the animal brain. I, being someone who has an addictive personality, severe addiction to exercise, and for that reason, often having connected with many people in my life who have addictive tendencies with other things, drugs, alcohol, things like that, I tend to attract that energy into my life because of my struggles with it. And it got me to thinking, okay, again, these patterns are all created from the same place. Addictive behavior makes perfect sense when it's contextualized within the human brain structure and evolution that we just talked about. It comes from the part of the brain that is older evolutionarily, and all patterns of habit or action. This can be just a habit, what you might call a bad habit, or an addiction. So I like to draw the line that addiction becomes addiction when it is a bad habit that comes to the point of being self-destructive in some way or holding you back. But they're really coming from the same brain chemistry. And again, there are different magnitudes, so to speak. So we do have, of course, a clinical definition for what qualifies as addiction, but I have understood the stickiness of my bad habits to actually be coming, for the most part, from the same place as getting caught into a pattern of addiction, which I have been in. And the animal brain is automatic, efficient, and nearly identical to that of other animals. So when we find a pattern, behavior, or emotional reaction, or some kind of behavior really that elicits an emotional response, it's usually about safety. It's usually about survival, is usually in the unconscious mind. So we have associated some kind of action with, I need this to survive. And if I am severed from it, I panic, right? So I had created in my mind some kind of reality in which I needed that exercise to be safe. I created an emotional attachment and a physical, which we'll talk about, attachment to that addictive exercise that literally felt like life or death in my unconscious mind. So addiction occurs when the animal brain wrongly believes that a substance, action, or emotion is completely necessary for survival. And stuckness is the fight between you, your higher evolved true self, as we would call the scientific conscious mind, and your animal self, as we would call the scientific unconscious mind, which we just went through the physical separation for. So this can happen not just with addiction itself, but with any kind of bad habit or lack of a good habit that you need. There is safety in where you now are. There is a payoff in where you now are. So when people say to me, I hate where I am and I want to change. I hate where I am and I want to change, but I don't understand why I can't change. The answer is not to keep finding the benefits of what you're going to get out of changing. You already know the benefits. What you need to understand is what is the payoff for where you are right now, because you won't see it consciously. But if you've been stuck in a similar place for a long time, whether it's in a relationship that you're not happy in or a continuously abusive relationships, right? Overweight, or continuously overweight, and then you're kind of going back and forth. Whatever place you're stuck in, there is what we call a payoff, or it wouldn't stick around. You would not be continuously bringing about this physical reality unless you benefited in some way, whether that be emotional, and it's usually emotionally tied to survival. So what is benefiting you about being overweight? What is benefiting you about not being consistent in the gym? What is benefiting you about continuously seeking and promoting and feeding into relationships in your life that aren't actually giving you what you want? Because then you can figure out and you can say and you can define, hey, I know what the payoff is now. My belief system tells me that I need this physical reality in order to have that payoff. I'm going to prove to myself I can have that emotional security. I can have that unconscious survival in a different physical way. And that's what this is about. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. And sounds like they're doing construction outside. Let's move into the body mind. This is the juicy part, you guys. This is the real juicy part. And I know it's been a long time that we were moving up to this, but I truly needed to contextualize it all. We in our society, in our world, have a way of really separating the mind and the body. And when I started fitness coaching, it became really evident to me that there were fitness coaches all over. And most of them were saying, hey, I give you the fitness, I give you the nutrition, I give you the programming, and hey, I also work on your mind. And that never really made sense to me, because after coming out of what I came out of, it was kind of like, wait. Why? First of all, why is that an afterthought? That is the foundation. That is the foundation. Obviously, you see 99% of people following fitness programming who are unsuccessful long-term. Why? Because the first thing they look at is the fitness and the nutrition programming. Why are we not flipping that around? This is about a change from within you. This is about a change in your identity. It's about a change in your brain and your body physiologically, right? So this is the knowledge I want to bring to people, because this is the stuff that counts. This is the stuff that matters. This is the stuff that allowed me to heal from an eating disorder and an exercise addiction and build a business. It allowed me to overcome all of those things. So let's get into some of the science here. Starting with basic brain chemistry. First of all, it's important to understand that the brain communicates and interacts with the rest of the body via what are called electrochemical signals. Some of these signals travel down neurons and prompt reflexive responses, while others prompt chemical or hormonal releases that create feelings and emotions. So most of us know a little bit about the nervous system and the central nervous system. We know that the brain is connected through networks of neurons that travel through the body. This is why if you want to pick up your hand, right? Let's say it's a reflexive response. You touch a hot stove, your hand is, oh, that's hot. The neurons in your hand feel that heat, travel all the way back up to your brain, and they tell you, oh, wow, that really hurt. But before you even know that, you've moved your hand away, right? Your brain and your body are attached. They are the same thing. So we think of the brain as above the shoulders, but the neural networks that travel throughout the body are actually imprints of the entire brain in the entire body. So habit change, brain change is body change, and body change is brain change. And that's what mindful movement is really about. So some of these electrochemical signals, usually some kind of neurotransmitter, sorry if you guys can hear that, it sounds like they're doing construction over here, are responsible for muscle contractions and things like that. So for example, you say in your head mentally, I want to flex the bicep. That intention, that signal travels down the neurons all the way to the biceps. And what happens is that electrochemical signal actually has it's like a puzzle piece, right? A receptor site on a muscle cell has a puzzle piece match for that signal. They match and it communicates to the muscle cell to contract. So that's what's happening. And that's for movement and things like that. Now, the interesting thing is the same thing goes for emotional responses. So hormones are types of neurotransmitters that, again, travel throughout the brain and body. Usually it starts with an electrochemical signal like a neurotransmitter coming from the brain, then going to the cells of a gland, matching with the cells of a gland, telling the gland instructions to secrete a certain hormone, which then travels down to more cells in the body. And this is how emotions become physical feelings. Emotions become physical feelings because they begin as thoughts and emotions in the mind, and they then create this feedback loop to where we can feel emotion physically. I feel the anxiety in my chest. I feel the anxiety in my stomach. I feel my heart beating faster, right? Because the cells of the body are responding to the traveling through of that hormone, and brain and body are intimately connected. So any kind of electrochemical signal, the simple term for that is a ligand. And like puzzle pieces, the ligands attach to a cell. So I'm going to bring up a little visual here to make it a little bit easier to understand. If I can get this to move for me. Here we go. So here's a cell and a binding site or a protein, for example. So let's see that ligand traveled all across the neurotransmitters and it went to a muscle cell and it said, hey, contract. This is how you move your body. This is how your brain and your body interact. Now, the same thing goes for emotions, right? Like I said. So the chemicals received by receptor sites, again, are called ligands. And for our purposes, the two main types are neurotransmitters and hormones. So I like to think of neurotransmitters more about connection between the physical movement of the body. And this is just, again, simplified terms. We don't need to be crazy scientists to understand habit change, but we do need to have an understanding of all of this happening in the body so we can tangibilize the habits that we're going to talk about later. Hormones are responsible for the creation of emotion and physical feeling of emotion in the body. Now, as brain and body interact through the sending and receiving of these signals, they begin to combine forces to create a state of being that becomes our default. And what I mean by that is that the feedback loop is two-sided, so to speak. You have a thought that creates an emotion, that creates a feeling. That feeling creates an emotion, which creates a thought. It's an endless feedback loop that goes back and forth, and you get stuck in these emotional patterns because brain and body are bouncing back and forth. And this is part of what makes change difficult. So since the human body is primed for efficiency, one of the number one ways to promote survival by the unconscious mind is efficiency. This is why we're so good at learning new skills and performing them faster and more efficiently. Because efficiency is, I built a neural network for that thing that saved my ass this one time. So the next time I do it, it's going to be easier. This is about survival, right? So every time neural networks are fired, including emotional patterns, they are reinforced. So for the same reason that the more you practice a certain step in dancing or tap dancing, the easier it is to perform, the more you fire off a specific emotional response, the more stuck into that pattern of emotional response you're going to be, right? So while the reptilian part of the subconscious brain requires efficiency to maintain homeostasis, and all of the other, parts of the body, the processes in the body that are happening in the background, they need to be efficient so that we don't have to use a lot of energy to perform them. The mammalian brain and more highly evolved parts of the brain, like the limbic system, can fall into patterns and habits of feeling and emotional response that don't actually serve us, who we want to be, or where we want to go. And this is why sometimes we respond to people and things in ways that we don't want, we don't recognize. And we have this ability as humans, which we call metacognition, which is the ability to observe ourselves, which other mammals for the most part don't have. And we can say, oh, why did I do that? Or why did I act that way? And it's because these networks are sticky and they're reinforced each time. So chasing these patterned emotional responses influences, oops, totally switched pages there. Like a map, these networks throughout brain and body create habits and feelings that become, quote, who you are. Who you are is mapped physically into the brain and the body. Your personality is your entire body. It's throughout your entire body. It's mapped, it's locked in, it's physically imprinted. So when your subconscious is running the show, brain becomes body and body becomes brain. Your unconscious mind and your body are the same thing. Your body is primed and ready to perform the same actions, think the same thoughts, engage in the same habits, entertain the same emotional patterns. So changing who you are is paramount in changing what you create and what you get and what you manifest, because those habits that are changing require you to change physically, physiologically from the inside out, right? So let's talk more about the emotions a little bit, right? Emotions, if they are created by chemicals, emotions are created by hormones. Chemicals become addictive, right? We talk about, the term of the adrenaline junkie, or the person who's always the victim, or negative Nelly. Emotional patterns become addictive and sticky because they are caused by chemicals. Now we know that chemicals, which are externally put into the body from externally, can become addictive. So why not the chemicals that are produced within the body, right? The more your brain fires emotions by releasing particular chemicals, the more it wires the same habitual patterns of emotion into your brain. So your brain begins to crave specific chemicals that cause specific emotions, and these repeated hormonal releases create lasting neural networks. So not only are those networks to promote the same habits, responses, and behaviors mapped into the body, ready to fire whenever you want to or don't want to, right? It's like a highway, like a network, a grid, a roadway of the path of least resistance. Your habits are the path of least resistance because they're already built. They're already built, right? And the other thing is, when a cell receives a ligand enough times, it begins to adapt in order to accept more of them. So the cells in your body will begin to grow and create additional receptor sites on their membranes to receive that ligand. So what happens if you are continuously firing some kind of hormone or electrochemical signal that results in emotions of feeling victimized? Your cells are conditioned to the chemical of victimization. They are physically addicted to the chemical that creates that feeling. So when you begin to deny them of that feeling, they actually go through withdrawal symptoms. The cells in your body go through withdrawal symptoms. And this is part of why we go back and forth with, I'm going to use discipline, I'm going to create what I want, but I unconsciously actually need this habit or behavior to feel safe. My body needs it, my body craves it. So I'm going to self-sabotage or fall into some kind of different pattern, right? So chasing these patterned emotional releases influences our thoughts, actions, crafted identities, and thus what we're able to create. What you create in your physical reality is a direct reflection of your habits, behaviors, and emotional responses. If those things are locked in physiologically into your entire body and created in a way that makes them difficult to change, your external reality is going to be difficult to change, because every time you try to change it, you are going at odds with a complete physiological network that's already been built. And that network goes through what's called withdrawal. And that withdrawal usually comes up as what we like to call limiting belief, right? So we get all gung-ho about making a change. We get all excited, we put all of our ducks in a row and we use discipline. And then a little while in, we start to think, wow, I'm not getting the results I want. And then we start to have thoughts like, oh, man, who do you think you are? Imposter syndrome. What made you think you could do this? Doubts, and those are your cells in your body, which are conditioned to a certain emotion and a certain habit and a certain behavior, saying, hey, Aren't you going to do this for us? We're going to, and this is how limiting belief starts to form. Limiting belief is a physiological imprint in your body, and it is the result in your brain which creates the limiting belief. It's brain and body. So it's crazy. And you can see how these patterns are particularly good at preventing us from then, of course, creating anything new, because new requires us to sever ourselves from the networks that have been built and quite literally withdraw from the chemicals that have been released and build new networks and promote new chemical patterns. And that is quite similar to, maybe withdrawing from a drug or changing any addiction, right? Habit change is a very physiological process, very physiological. So we talked about ligands a little bit, and let's talk about state of being. Who we are or who we act as is created by a physically imprinted maintenance system running throughout our entire bodies. Thoughts in the brain fire neural networks that create emotional responses to match those thoughts. This is how we begin to feel physically the way we are thinking, and we begin to think the way we are feeling, and we have this endless feedback loop that creates our state of being. Now, state of being is created by your thoughts, feelings, and actions. If these three things are responsible for what we create in life, most principally our actions, what we manifest, so to speak, what we're surrounded by, what our physical realities look like, you can see how this little cycle, it makes our state of being difficult to change, which makes our physical realities difficult to change. Habit change is usually about acquiring something new. We do it not just because we want to be self-righteous. We do it because we know it's necessary to acquire something in our lives that we don't have now. So if you keep finding yourself in the same situations and scenarios that don't satisfy you in your life, the reason being is that you are quite literally addicted to the thoughts, feelings, and actions that bring those things about. And when you go through some kind of withdrawal, hey, I haven't felt like a victim in a little while. Oof, that person just said something. I'm going to take it personally right away so I can feel like a victim because I am withdrawn from that. Right. And this is where you start to realize that taking radical responsibility for all of the things in your life that you have or don't have, it's a complicated process, and it's never about fault. It's never about guilt. It's never about remorse. There is no guilt involved. It's unconscious. You can't help it. It's not your fault. That's not the point. The point is you still have to take responsibility to make a change. So we need to separate responsibility from fault, because I think that is part of one of the biggest issues that we have when it comes to creating change. If we can take the negative charge off of taking responsibility, we can make these changes, right? So state of being is a really interesting thing. It's something I talk a ton about. And state of being is going to funnel into self-identity. And this is why they often say, hey, if you want to lose 100 pounds, you've got to become someone new. You have to identify with the person that would have that thing before they have it. And that is the law of attraction and everything else. The law of attraction is the separation between the conscious and the unconscious mind. The law of attraction is the connection between mind and body. The law of attraction is let's change my physiological imprint and facilitate a greater state of being that creates what I want. It's not rocket science. It's not just vibration. It's not just, I'm going to bring it in, because you can bring whatever you want in and it'll disappear almost as quickly as it came if you don't change yourself. That's where the weight loss and the weight gain and the weight loss and the weight gain and the yo-yoing, that's where it comes from. It will disappear almost as quickly as it came if you don't change yourself, right? It will, because your state of being is going to determine what you generate physically and keep around. So if you can live under the mentality that I am surrounded by all that I am. This is something I tell myself often. When I feel dissatisfied or frustrated or restless, I say to myself, Megan, I am surrounded by everything that I am. And then I realize that it's my responsibility to make those changes. Now, it doesn't mean that unfortunate circumstances don't happen. It doesn't mean that we don't all come from different places, and that is an important consideration to make, especially in acknowledging where you might be ahead of someone else by, none of your doing. But the reality remains that we still have to take responsibility to make any change, right? So the brain and the body work in a cycle with one another. And through this cycle, they become one. They become one and the same. There is no separation. There is none. This makes changing our state of being incredibly difficult. So when we talk about changing the body in the fitness industry, I wish we would talk more about changing the self, changing the state of being. Because there were several times I tried to gain weight, try to lose weight, try to gain weight, try to lose weight, try to stop over exercising. Like none of it ever mattered. I never met consistency in my life. I never met consistently acquiring the things that I wanted until I created this congruency in this equilibrium in the place that I wanted mentally and physically, of course, right? Oh man. And these are just a couple additional points here. This is the feedback loop. But one thing here, because our habitual thoughts, actions, and emotions create our state of being, we act more in accordance with our state of being than our true desires. We unconsciously have a split interest, right? Consciously, we want to move towards what we're trying to create. That's discipline. And unconsciously, we're going back to where we came from because it's safe. We act automatically in agreement with the physical map within our bodies rather than consciously on what we know needs to change, because we have internal neural networks, internal emotional chemical addictions in down to a cellular level that make that change difficult, right? So now that we know how important it is to understand where all of this is coming from, habit change is not this completely oh, here we go. Habit change is not this completely undefinable, intangible thing. It has everything to do with your physical body. And that's why working out the body is not the only thing we need to work out. We kind of went over this a little. Basically, we have a tendency to focus on the lack because of our survival instinct. And this is where we get stuck as well. But I'm going to pass over this a little bit. I want to get to the 3 daily practices that you should start implementing today to begin to recondition the unconscious mind to be in agreement with what the conscious mind wants to create, whether that be, a healthier relationship with yourself, weight loss, business, like greater income. Like, how do I make, an extra $3,000 a month? Like, start by making these changes. And it's going to sound trivial. It's going to sound like what every guru on social media has told you. But I hope today that I can explain to you, rather than just what, I can explain to you why. The first thing is visualization, right? So we hear this a lot in the, manifestation, law of attraction community, so to speak. Visualization is not just, I'm going to visualize what I want happening. I like to describe visualization as a snapshot in time. A snapshot in time is not a single event. It is if I were to move forward and fully embody the version of myself that I would be in this situation in any moment in time. So I'm sitting in my backyard. I'm 35. I don't know. I'm sitting in my backyard. I'm 35. I got my family. I'm on the phone with the client because of this. It's like a moment in time. Like, what are all of the things in this moment that you have? Because it's not about all of the things. It's about how they interact. It's about you being there and feeling it. Because one of the things about the unconscious mind is that it doesn't know the difference between an imagined and a real situation. This is why we often revisit trauma and we have a memory of something that has happened to us and we feel physically the feelings that we felt during that situation. Now, consciously, we know we're not there, but the unconscious mind body, which is 90% of what we need to make changes on, doesn't know the difference. This is why we can easily reassociate into situations that have harmed us in some way. We can feel physically the emotional negativity of trauma, right? And we can feel physically positive things as well. And this is why memory is so powerful. But the interesting thing is that visualization is a forward-focused memory, so to speak. When you place yourself into a situation and you're fully associated emotionally, you actually begin to wire new physiological, emotional, and feeling patterns that create new networks and start to tip the scale over to the other side, right? So we are always associated emotionally into where we are. And when we are associated emotionally into where we are consistently focused on what we are lacking. When we know what we want and we don't have it yet, we are consistently focused on, here's where I am now, here's where I want to go, here's point A, here's point B. I have all of my attention on the space between point A and point B rather than point B. Visualization is I'm putting my attention on point B, because when I do that, I'm actually starting to create new electrochemical signals within my brain and body that are reconditioning the physiology of my brain and body, right? So visualization is not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to not fully associate into, right? Get yourself into that meditation and start creating new things. Yes. And this is why it's paramount in any kind of fitness transformation as well. But now moving forward, I want to leave room for questions. So here we go. Oops. Second one is gratitude. And now I have an entire YouTube video on this, which I'm going to be posting probably this week. I have filmed it. I have not edited it yet. So if you guys are interested in hearing more short form videos that are straight to the point of all of these concepts, I do have a YouTube. I will be posting it probably, in the group somewhere, just for you guys to see. But there is a video on gratitude. Now, everyone talks about gratitude. We talk about, hey, we need to be more grateful. We need to journal 3 things we're grateful for every day. But why? What's the real reason? And it's not a self-righteous thing. In fact, it can be quite a selfish thing, which sounds so counterintuitive, but let me explain what I mean by that. I think we have this idea that gratitude has to be about acknowledging what we have that other people don't have and being grateful for the purposes of basically that, right? Being, self-righteous in some way, or just having an understanding of our privilege, which yes, it is all of those things, but how is it not just for this moment? How can it actually move us forward? Because when our unconscious mind is wired for survival. That means it's always going to be more focused on lack than it is on presence. What I mean by that is we are more inclined to focus on what we don't have than what we do. This is why it's easy to take things for granted. This is why every human struggles with taking things for granted, not because we're bad people, but because our brains are focused more on what's missing. And our brains are focused more on what's missing because it's based on survival. If there is something missing, if you're missing food, water, shelter, something that could keep you alive, it is in your brain's first interest and best interest to take care of that thing that's missing to keep you alive. So we're always focused on that. Now, gratitude starts to tip the scales. There is a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is basically a filtering mechanism. So believe it or not, our environments are far too overstimulating. In fact, there are certain animals, look up the mantis shrimp, it can see hundreds of colors that we can't see. We filter information because it's too overstimulating. In other words, I could tell you to look around the room and find all the things that are red, and then ask you what's blue, and you wouldn't be able to tell me what's blue. And the interesting thing about that is this gives us a little bit more compassion for other people as well when we talk about things that we're disagreeing with them on. Political conversations, right? Whatever the case may be. There's so many times when we're like, oh, why am I not seeing eye to eye with this person? How can they see in front of them so much evidence that negates their opinion, and they still can't see it? And the answer is they literally don't, because we always see what we want to see. We are tuned into what we expect. If I'm looking for blue, I'm going to find blue, and I'm going to see more blue. And my perception of the thing as a whole is going to be defined by the relative proportion of what I'm seeing. So when our reticular activating system is conditioned to see more of what we are missing, we are continuously reinforcing those things, and we're actually missing opportunities. We're missing opportunities to acquire what we want because we're not even seeing them. They're passing us by. But when we start to tune into what we have that is good, it flips and reconditions the reticular activating system to focus on what is positive. And then we realize that all of these opportunities are here under our noses the entire time, but we weren't taking them. So gratitude is quite selfishly, and I mean selfish in the best way possible, a way to move you closer to acquiring more of what you want. It's not about this moment, it's about conditioning your mind moving forward. And I can answer more questions on that. I get into great depth on gratitude in the YouTube video, specifically like 3 main reasons that you need to practice it and all of that stuff. But the third thing is affirmation, emotionally connected affirmation. Now, something that I like to talk a lot about is emotionally connected affirmation, right? Fully associated affirmation. There are plenty of people that have heard of affirmation, done it. They come to me, they're like, oh, I've done all the affirmations, I've done all the stuff, and like it's not working, right? And my answer to them is you can't just speak the words. You have to emotionally associate with the situation. Because if you're not feeling, and this is what Joe Dispenza calls heartfelt emotion, when you feel a new emotion that you feel it physically swelling in your chest and your body, it's almost like a pulsing energy through your whole body. If you don't feel that, you are not creating a new electrochemical signal throughout brain and body that reconditions the mind body connection we're talking about. If belief system is created by this physiochemical imprint on the brain body, and that is just the after effect in the mind, consciously and unconsciously, and affirmation is designed to reverse limiting belief, basically. We have to create a physiological response in the body of feeling and emotion in order to change that. So if you're speaking your affirmations out loud, but you are not feeling them physically and emotionally, you're not going to make a change. So when I speak things, I feel them. I get so associated with it that I'm in that emotional space. I feel it pulsing through brain and body, and I know I'm making a change. I know I'm making a change. It's a reconditioning of the physical body and mind that needs to be elicited. It's not just, I'm speaking these things and they're not just coming, right? You can't just, and this is where those ideas on manifestation and the law of attraction is, you get more of what you think about and speak about. Yeah, you do, but not if it's not creating a new physiological response. It's about creating a new physiological response. It's not magic. It's not, I mean, it practically feels like magic, but it's not magic. And I think that is one of the biggest misunderstandings. So ways, and body movement, right? I'm a huge believer in whether you are looking to make a fitness transformation or not. Maybe it's not fitness, maybe it's something else in your life. Moving your body is going to facilitate that. If you're not moving your body, you are so out of touch with the mind body connection that these other 3 are going to be more difficult for you. It's just going to be that way. I hate to tell you, but it is. So some kind of functional, routine of movement is going to open you up to greater possibilities. Not only is it going to clear your thoughts, but it's going to give you an awareness of when you are tuned into these things more successfully, a mind body awareness. Visualization, gratitude, and affirmation are the 3 parts of my daily morning routine, which I have clients do, I have everyone in my online course do, I have my community do. It is a process of putting yourself into the situation of the life or the version of yourself that you want to be and live, right? Closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be by fully associating your unconscious mind into that place to where it doesn't know the difference and you're feeling those emotions. Gratitude, conditioning the mind to look at the positive, changing the reticular activating system so that when those opportunities present themselves, that you actually can acquire what you're looking for. You take them. Because it's all about action and habit. There are opportunities all around you to acquire what you're looking for. It's not that they're not coming. It's that we're not tuned into them. It's not that they're not coming. It's that our version of reality doesn't include them because our reticular activating system is creating a version of reality in which we can only see more of what we have. It's there. Otherwise, other people wouldn't have it. It's there. You've got to get yourself to see it. And that takes a reconditioning of the mind that can only be done by focusing on more of what is good until you see more of what is good, because it is the association between what you have that is good and what you want that is good that will be made. And that's the gratitude. And the third thing is the affirmation, but it needs to be emotionally connected and it needs to elicit a physical emotional response. So I think that is the presentation, you guys. Let me quickly, okay, stop my sharing. We have still this. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I wanted to chat a little bit more about what I do for a bit, also open up the floor for questions. But before I do, I wanted to say that I have a 12-week online course that goes into this in great depth. It's called Shift. And there's basically an entire month on the demystification of the law of attraction manifestation, which creates a daily routine for you to basically stick to. The second month is all of the science of the mind body connection, as well as the unconscious conscious separation, and a little bit more on quantum physics as well, which is going to do more informing you on why the separation between mind and body, or consciousness and physicality, are just an illusion, and how you can take that information and create something with it. And the entire last month takes all of this that we just talked about into self-identity and success. And it talks about who is the person you need to become, what are your perceptive limitations, right? What are your limitations in the way that you define things that are actually holding you back from the framing in what success is and how it's acquired? Of course, this masterclass is what it is, and I hope you got what you needed from it. But I would also say that if you're looking to create more of this, whether it is I'm looking to make any change in my life, or I even had a former client reach out a couple of weeks back, and she's in the online course now, and she was a fitness client, and she said, as much as I loved working on fitness for so long, it wasn't until I was in this course that anything stuck, because it truly is about the mind body connection. So just here to say that the online course is the most basic thing that I offer, the most basic thing that I do. After that, there is one-on-one fitness coaching, which is nutrition, of course, physical workouts, which are functional. And it's a mix between, hey, how do I create the physical results that I want with my body and my health, but also feel connected in the movement that I'm doing, and release chronic pain. Like, how do I learn so much about my body that I don't have the aches and the pains, and I age gracefully? And there's such a neglect in the fitness industry on creating a optimal quality of life rather than just a physical result. So that's really what this is about. And then the third thing I do is the mind body congruency coaching, which is full mind body life coaching. So all of the things that the fitness coaching includes, but moving now into also getting the online course included with that, weekly talks and more therapy type situations like timeline therapy, revisiting past trauma or conditioning, changing the conditioning, hypnosis, things like that. So if you are interested in either of the two coaching options, being the physical fitness coaching or the full on life coaching, which is basically an expansion of the fitness coaching and adds the online course, you can DM me or reach out, specifically on Facebook or anywhere else. I do have a link tree as well in my Facebook profile. You can book a call from there. And then I usually start with a consultation call where just get to know you and your goals, no pressure. And then if we do feel like it's a good fit to move forward with talking more about details, then we will. So either way on those calls, I hope to help as much as I can, regardless of whether you want to become a client. And then the other thing is that the course itself for a 3-month course is $777 on the regular. However, today, if you are present for the masterclass, I am basically taking off 20%. So if you decide to purchase the course within the next 24 hours, being from, let's say, well, it's 8 p.m. my time, it'll be 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. Bless your souls if you're here at 9:30 at night. It'll be until 10 the following day. But within the next, if you order the course within the next 24 hours, it will be 20% off, which will be $544, which for a 3-month course is pretty great. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to be posting the link for the course. I'll put it in the chat right now, and I'll also put it in the group. And again, if you guys are interested in as well the coaching one-on-one, you can message me about that. And either way, I'm just really happy to be fostering new relationships and spreading this message, because that's really what my objective is regardless of whether I ever talk to you personally, regardless of whether I ever work with you personally, if this is information that I can bring to more people, this is how we create change, not only on a personal level, but on a collective level into the direction that we really want. And that is what I'm passionate about. So I'm going to be sending the link now. Trying to find the, be sending the link now into the chat. And then I will, while I'm doing that, open up for questions. So if you have a question, let's see, I'm going to unmute everyone now. And or I'll allow you to unmute yourself. How's that? And if you have any specific questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand or whatever you want to do. And I'll open up the floor now.
If a person having a health issue, right? So I think it's difficult to go through this, isn't it? I mean, do we have to handle the health issue first before?
Can you repeat the beginning of the question?
I mean, if a person having health issues, to go through the mind and body thing, you got to tackle the health issue first, isn't it?
Yeah. So as far as the online course, anyone can go through. If we're talking about the one-on-one coaching, that's just something that we could discuss personally. It really depends on what the issue itself is. But I'm also a big believer in most physical issues being, of course, representations of other issues that we don't see as physical, right? So this, I think, reorganization of the mind-body connection in many cases will begin to heal those things as well. But if it is also some more of a type of physical issue that when it comes to nutrition and workouts that we need to work around, that's just a conversation that I would have personally with the person, and we would work through it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions here? Just start talking if you have any. It's a smaller crew here at the end, so don't feel afraid to just shout out, hey, I got a question. And in the meantime, I'm going to be posting the link to the online course in the chat, so you can click that. I'm also going to post it in the group though for you guys. But keep in mind that if you are interested in the one-on-one coaching, that comes with the online course. So if you are thinking that that's the route you might take, I would hold off on purchasing the course, and I would get on the phone with me first. But yeah, the online course, like I said, is 20% off, as are both of the coaching packages, actually, which are both 6 months minimum, but 20% off of everything if you're coming from this masterclass. If it is the online course, within the next 24 hours. If it is for coaching, as long as you book a call this week, then you'll get the 20% off, right? Because I'm on vacation right now, but I'm doing a good job working on vacation. So I recognize that it's very unlikely you'll book a call for this week. But basically, if you are coming from this masterclass, regardless of how long it takes you to book the call and get through the coaching, you will get 20% off. So no worries there. But if everyone else is good and you don't have questions, thank you, Vicky. I'm glad that you're mind blown. Then, have a great rest of your night. Stick around in the group. If you have any friends in your life that you think would benefit from hearing this masterclass or information, go ahead and invite them to the Facebook group, because I will be posting the Zoom recording in the Facebook group for the people who were not here and wanted to view it. And that includes people that weren't necessarily signed up beforehand. This is just something that I want everybody to have access to. So either way, I hope everybody has a lovely rest of their night. And yeah, sounds great, Todd. Just message me. I know that we've chatted a little bit before. No pressure on doing it right now. I know Zoom can be a hard place for some people, but I am glad this worked out on Zoom. And I will chat with you guys soon. Have a great rest of your night.